Teams dominated testimony in day 3 of the Taylor Parker trial in Bowie County.
NBC6's Donald Britton joins us now live with a wrap of today's testimony in the trial of the woman accused of killing another pregnant woman and removing the baby from her womb.
Taylor Parker. She's accused in the death of Reagan Simmons Hancock and her unborn baby back in October. The victim was found in her home with a large cut across her stomach and the baby missing.
What happens when a lie grows too big to escape? Taylor Parker pretended to be pregnant until the truth pushed her to murder. Today she waits on death row, and her story forces us to ask, can a lie destroy not just lives, but an entire community? Right now, a woman sits alone in a small 6 by 9 foot prison cell in Texas, waiting for the state to decide her fate. The red brick walls of the O'Daniel unit in Gatesville are silent, except for the hum of air conditioning and the steady footsteps of guards on patrol. Inside this maximum security prison, Taylor Renee Parker lies on her narrow bed, staring at the same concrete ceiling she has faced for over 2 years. Experts say death row inmates often pass through emotional stages, from denial to acceptance. Those who've met Parker describe her as caught somewhere in between. Some days she insists she's innocent. Other days, the reality of what she did and what's coming presses down like a heavy weight she can't escape. But what really happens in the final 24 hours before an execution? Few people ever see beyond the headlines or understand what takes place when a state decides to end a life. Tonight, we'll look at what Taylor Parker's last day on Earth could look like when that moment arrives. For anyone unfamiliar with her story, Parker is the Texas woman convicted of murdering her pregnant friend, Reagan Simmons Hancock, in October 2020. In a desperate attempt to keep her boyfriend from discovering her lies, Parker cut Reagan's unborn baby from her womb after brutally attacking her. The jury needed only 1 hour to find her guilty of capital murder. To understand how she reached this point, we must revisit that horrific day. On October 9, 2020, in the quiet town of New Boston, Texas, 21-year-old Reagan was 34 weeks pregnant and preparing to welcome her daughter. That morning, someone she trusted opened her door, unaware that her friend had come armed with a hammer and a scalpel. The assault that followed was unspeakably violent. Reagan was struck in the head again and again until her skull was crushed. Still alive, she fought to protect both herself and her unborn child as Parker began cutting into her abdomen. Her 3-year-old daughter was somewhere in the house, hearing everything. Reagan kept fighting until her body gave out. What makes this crime even more disturbing is the planning behind it. For months, Parker pretended to be pregnant. She showed fake ultrasounds, hosted a gender reveal party, and posted photos online to make her story believable. She even took Reagan's wedding pictures, pretending to be a supportive friend while secretly preparing to take her life. On the morning of the murder, investigators found that Parker had searched online for how to care for premature babies born at 35 weeks. She brought tools meant for the task. This was not a spontaneous act of rage, but a calculated and premeditated plan. Reagan's baby girl, Braxlyn Sage Hancock, was 34 weeks along and still had a heartbeat when delivered. But Parker's lack of medical knowledge ensured the child wouldn't survive. When Taylor Parker's case went to trial in 2022, the evidence was overwhelming. Over 140 witnesses described her web of lies and cruelty. On October 3rd, the jury found her guilty, and a month later, Judge John Tidwell sentenced her to death with the words, "Take her to death row, but execution may never happen." Since Texas reinstated the death penalty in 1976, nearly 600 people have been executed, only 6 of them women. Appeals can take decades. The average death row wait in Texas is around 18 years. Parker, now 29, could be in her 50s before facing execution, if ever. Her lawyers are already appealing, arguing trial errors and unaddressed mental health issues. Life on death row is its own punishment. Parker spends 22 hours a day in a 6 by 9 cell at the O'Daniel unit in Gatesville. Her world consists of a metal bed, toilet, and a small table. She eats warm prison meals, gets an hour of recreation if staff allows, and is permitted 4 short phone calls a year. The monotony and isolation cause severe mental strain, what experts call a living death. Prison psychologists report inmates suffering anxiety, paranoia, and hallucinations as they wait years for an uncertain end. Parker's guilt is undeniable. She was caught holding the stolen baby of her murdered friend, Reagan Hancock. Her crime, premeditated, personal, and rooted in lies, makes her remorse more complex and her mental torment deeper. Meanwhile, Reagan's family continues to suffer through each appeal, reliving their trauma again and again. Closure may be decades away. When Parker's final appeal is denied, her last day will follow a strict schedule. A simple breakfast, final phone calls, a transfer to Huntsville's death chamber, and at 6 p.m., the lethal injection. Within minutes, she'll be pronounced dead, ending a story that has haunted Texas since 2020. What began as a lie to gain sympathy grew into an alternate reality she could no longer escape. When someone invests that much effort in sustaining an illusion, it's not simply manipulation. It's a desperate cry for help that went unanswered. Her defense attorney described her life as one surrounded by silence. Everyone around her, friends, family, and even her boyfriend, noticed something was off, yet no one dared to confront her lies. They chose politeness over truth, afraid to challenge her fragile story. That collective silence became one of the biggest failures in Parker's life. If someone had intervened early, if anyone had asked the hard questions, perhaps the chain of events that followed could have been stopped before it turned deadly. Psychologists who later examined Parker described her mental state as severely disturbed. She displayed classic symptoms of compulsive lying, fabrications designed to fill an emotional void. Her constant need for attention and validation suggested deep psychological pain. She lived in denial, creating stories to mask her trauma and insecurities. Experts believe that with timely therapy and emotional intervention, her self-destructive spiral might have been slowed or even reversed. But without treatment, her delusions grew until they consumed not only her life but also the lives of others. Parker's story also exposes how dangerous unaddressed emotional wounds can become. At just 23, she underwent a hysterectomy, a devastating loss that left her unable to have children. The surgery destroyed her sense of identity and self-worth, but no one offered meaningful mental health support. Infertility can cause profound grief and a feeling of incompleteness, especially for someone already emotionally fragile. Without counseling or compassion, Parker's pain turned into obsession. Her desperate attempt to reclaim what she'd lost, motherhood, led her to commit one of the most horrifying crimes in Texas history. Today, Taylor Parker sits in a small death row cell, awaiting the slow turn of justice. She has accepted responsibility for her actions, admitting that she does not deserve freedom after taking what she can never give back. Her appeals continue through the Texas courts, but for Parker, the real punishment is the lifetime of guilt she carries. Her case reminds us that sometimes the most dangerous thing we can do is stay silent. Lies ignored can grow into monsters, and sometimes confronting the truth early on can save lives. But Taylor Parker's story raises questions we all struggle to answer. What is justice and what is mercy? Does the death penalty bring true closure, or does it only deepen the wounds left behind? In a world still haunted by her actions, these questions linger painfully. The courtroom may have delivered its verdict, but for those affected, peace remains distant. Justice can punish, but it cannot restore what has been lost, and that truth hangs heavy over everyone involved. Because 2 families were destroyed that day. Reagan Simmons Hancock, just 21, radiant, full of life, was a loving mother, wife, and friend. For Reagan's family, time has stood still.